Serge is in the house. We chilling. This is an impromptu interview. He was in town, so while he was here, I had to be sure to catch him. First and foremostly, I known Serge since like 7th grade, and we were in a hip-hop group together. Before we go into that, what is your background in terms of music? Like, just your story in general of how you came into doing music and just artistic stuff in general.
I come from a very turbulent household. A lot of family problems, domestic violence. So I think music was a way out for me. It's a place where I could cub up in the attic pretty much and express myself and put that hostile energy into something more productive. So I started making beats. Yeah, it was really like the great escape for me. All that animosity, anything I was feeling, I was able to express through music. I mean, I obviously always had a kind of a Jones for music growing up, listening to songs on the radio. The turning point came around 14 years old, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I started DJing, and one thing led to another, and I started writing songs.
Right. Did anybody else in your house do music, or like it was just something that you just decided to kind of pick
It's the
up?
only one really in the family.
So when you started off, would you start off with DJing first and then making beats?
Yeah, I started off stealing. I mean, my parents bought music. They had records, so I would steal their jazz records, and I was producing hip-hop around the 90s when it was popular to sample and filter those samples. Guys like the Beat Miners, Lord Finesse, Salam Remy were kind of taking off and doing their thing, and that was my influence. So I stole the records, I got a record player and a sampler, and I started making beats through samples, and that was my thing.
Right. So any other influences in terms of like other producers that you thought were really dope, or just in general, like stuff you're playing right now?
My favorite groups are still like the Roots. I like all the old stuff. I'm still hooked on like all the 90s stuff. I haven't been tuning into much of the new stuff.
Right.
But back then, Pete Rock, DJ Premier, Salam Remy, those guys were like the guys I wanted to sound like, Beat Miners.
So in terms of like how you would like started finding your own production style, like how did that come about? Were you just experimenting with stuff? Like what was usually your process? Because I don't think I've ever really asked you that. Like I was kind of there when you'd make beats, but it was never really I don't remember you ever really having like a set process of what you did.
Yeah, it was always different. I never started with like just a drum beat or this or that. Like I did something different every time I made a beat. It was the mood I was in. It was the records that I had around me. I like to think of myself as half producer, half songwriter, because a lot of times when I made beats, it came from a concept that with my group, which would include you, when we came up with an idea for a song, I wanted to make a beat that was appropriate for that song.
Right.
So a lot of my inspiration was from the song. I've always been song inspired. I didn't just, I made beats, but I think most of the beats that ended up on our records were beats that I was inspired to make through a song concept. So, the song.
We were definitely a lot more concept driven. It was a lot more like, I think like ideas and themes rather than, just making a song.
Yeah, we really wanted to like make it special, everything that we did. So,
right.
And we wanted it to reflect what was going on in our lives, and we wanted it to be relevant, because I think that when you don't do that, you're insincere. And sincerity feels good. People don't really maybe consciously think about it all the time, but the closer we get to the truth, the more we respect ourselves, and the more we're able to identify with other people and feel comfortable around other people, because the truth really makes you free. And when we made music, we were making it truth. It was truth music. It was who we were was in the music. And that's what made it so special to us, because when we listened to it, it was like we put it down on tape, and then it was off our chest and it was on tape.
Like in your own words, like a little bit of the history of the group and how we had formed, and just a little bit of what we did, how you kind of started off on your own, production journey and whatnot.
I started making beats when I was like 13, 14. I was in school at Crossroads High School, and I asked Hante in class if I needed rappers, and I didn't know who was gonna rap, and I was like, look man, do you rap? And he's like, yeah, I rap. And I was like, well, let's come over, let's do a song. And he came over and we recorded a song called Who's That, with the Tribe Called Quest sample from the song Scenario, when he goes, who's that brown?
Yeah.
We sampled Who's That, and that ended up being the chorus. And we did that in the afternoon, and I think after that day, we realized like how smooth it was working together, and we've been working together ever since.
You were one of the first people, and probably only people thus far, that's really kind of directed me into how to get down on the record. So was that something that you learned on your own, or it was just kind of like, you know?
Yeah, I think that was something that I learned through experience, and I think we both had a learning experience working together, because I probably had never directed, you had never been directed, but as a producer, I felt very much like I was responsible for everything. If your verse wasn't good, it was my fault because I didn't say anything, or because I feel like I have an objective standpoint because I'm not the one rapping. So like, I definitely feel like it's a fresh perspective if I can stop you and be like, no, do it like this, or, you know, change this line, or take these words out, or, because I'm hearing it in a way you're not hearing it. You know,
Right.
I'm hearing it as like the listener, and you're so invested in your creation that it's hard for you really to be objective. You know, so yeah, I think that I became very comfortable directing, and I knew what I wanted, and if it didn't sound right and it didn't feel right, something had to be said.